Spotlight will be back on the embattled Vrede dairy farm at the state capture inquiry today. Former Free State Department of Agriculture head Peter Thabethe will be back in the hot seat. He's been implicated in helping the controversial Gupta brothers loot government funds. Last month, Thabethe told the commission how taxpayers' money was wasted on the Vrede farming project. ENC's Michael Appel is following that story for us. Now he's joining us now live from Parktown here in Johannesburg. Michael, a very good morning to you. Well, last time it seemed like Mr. Thabethe had more information to give about how they were approaching that whole disgraceful saga of the Estina dairy farm.
Vrede, that's right. Good morning. He was at pains to try and explain how this project got off the ground if one considers the lack of due diligence, the lack of planning behind it all. It was envisioned to be a 570 million rand project that would span about 5 years, I think, and about 342 million was to come from the government side, and over 220 million was to come from the private sector side. This is Estina company with a company in India, a dairy company called Paras. That was to provide the skills and the knowledge and the know-how behind this dairy venture in the Eastern Free State. Problem is, there were various contracts signed between the department, Estina, and Paras. Now that one where the three companies, the three parties, that was deemed to be an illegal contract by the state attorneys. So the contract that is finally accepted, Vrede, is one that is signed, I think, on the 5th of July. And this is only includes the department and Estina, which is a Gupta-linked company with the sole director, Kamal Vasram, a man who sold computers for the Gupta Sahara Computers Company, had absolutely no knowledge about dairy farming in the slightest. And it emerged from Peter Thabethe. Actually, during the last time he was here, the evidence leaders handed up the bank statements for Estina, which we now know is just a shell company for the Guptas, to be able to exercise their influence on this project and gain access to hundreds of millions of taxpayers' money, that Estina only had 16 rand and 98 cents in their account on the 4th of July, the day before it receives a 30 million rand prepayment from the Free State Agriculture Department. The department had to go to National Treasury or Provincial Treasury because the department simply didn't have this money. That shows you how little due diligence and planning was done, that they had to go to outside entities to try and beg money for this. So an absolute disgrace, and one which saw the intended beneficiaries of this project receive absolutely nothing. So the HOD, the accounting officer, the man who's supposed to give us all the answers for this, as his signature was on that contract on the 5th of July, he's back on the stand this morning.
And hopefully he'll be given a tough time by evidence leaders. I've always wondered that sometimes it looks like the evidence leaders, I know it's not a courtroom, it's not a court of law, it's a commission of inquiry, but sometimes if you've got somebody like Mr. Thabethe who signed off on some of those payments, surely he should be given a little bit of a tougher time on the stand.
Well, I suppose it all depends on the tactics that they use. Sometimes the answer, if somebody cannot answer something, or they are wrapped over the knuckles by the Deputy Chief Justice. Remember, Vrede, at the end of this entire saga that's going to span at least 2 years, there are going to be recommendations. So whether or not an evidence leader, an advocate, or the DCJ gives a particular witness a tough time, it's the recommendations that come out of this at the end of the 2-year process, whether there's going to be a recommendation that somebody like Peter Thabethe, for example, on the very least, he flouted the prescripts of the Public Finance Management Act when he signed off and didn't do due diligence when he was the accounting officer. So put criminal proceedings aside, there may just be some civil charges. It's just absolute gross negligence on his behalf, but that's what we're busy looking into at this commission at the moment.
Yeah, and I'm glad, Michael, you've mentioned recommendations at the end of this. And the big question will be, will the president then be bold enough and courageous to implement whatever those recommendations will be at the end of this 2-year-long Zondo Commission of Inquiry into state capture? Well, I guess time will tell. Thank you very much, Michael Appel.